Hello children, welcome to AIMS India's online classes. This is biology session. You are watching reproduction, the generating system, part 5. So we have completed the reproduction in animals and details of human reproductive system and the childbirth. Okay. So in this video we are going to discuss about the sexual reproduction in plants. Okay. You know, in plants, in your lower classes you learnt about the structure of flower. Okay, just to recall, a flower has commonly 4 parts. So these parts in order from the outer to inner. What are they? Sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. So of these 4 parts, stamens and carpels are the important parts, as these parts take part in sexual reproduction. Okay. The stamens are the male reproductive part, while the carpel is the female reproductive part. So let us discuss more about this sexual reproduction in plants. Are you ready, children? Let us proceed. So far we know that about nearly 2,75,000 species of flowering plants, with a few exceptions, all of them give rise to seeds enclosed in fruits. Most of the plants you are familiar with are mostly flowering plants. Their characters are quite remarkable. The plant size ranges from trees weighing many tons to tiny water plants about the size of a rice grain. Okay? A salt tree growing in the Himalayan mountains, a giant cactus in the Sahara desert, an orchid plant on the branch of a jungle tree. These are all flowering plants, isn't it? Now let us examine the essential parts of sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Let us take a typical datura flower. The flower, the reproductive unit of flowering plants. The reproductive parts of the flowering plants are located in the flower. You have studied already the different parts of flowering plants. What are they? Sepals, petals, stamens and carpels. Can you identify? This is the stalk of the flower, pedicel. Okay, it is the outermost whorl, that is called sepals, or it is also called calyx. Okay, and the second outermost whorl, that is called corolla. It includes petals. Okay, and the first inner whorl is called consisting of male reproductive part, anther, and the innermost whorl it is the female reproductive part. In female part, okay. So what are the 4 whorls of the flower? Stamen. The reproductive parts of the flower which the sex called stamens and carpels. The flowers having either stamens or carpels are called unisexual, like that of bottle gourd, bitter gourd, papaya. These are all the plants with unisexual flowers. Means male and female flowers are present. Okay. Then the flowers having both the stamens and carpels are called bisexual flowers, or they are also called the complete flowers. Example, datura. The stamens are the male portion called as androecium, which produce the male sex cells, that is called the pollen grains. Okay, a stamen consisting of an anther. So you can see here, this is the stamen. The stamen consisting of this part is called the male reproductive part. It is called anther, and there is a tube-like structure. It is called as a filament. Okay, anther and a filament. An anther is a swollen structure. It is present on the tip of the filament. The anther produces a powdery substance. It is called pollen grains. Pollen grains contain the male gamete. Okay. Next, the female portion called gynoecium, a carpel consisting of a basal swollen portion, that is called ovary. So this middle one is called as a carpel, and this is the swollen portion which is present at the bottom. Okay, at the center of the flower, it is called ovary. Okay, the ovary continues into a long tube-like structure, that is called style. This is called a style, and ends knob-like part. So this is the knob-like part. It is called as a stigma. Okay, the ovary contains female gamete. Egg is present inside the ovule. Okay, the reproductive part, it produces the female sex cells in the inside ovaries. One of this pollen, it is called as stigma. It is sticky in nature. It receives the pollen. Pollen is the reproductive cell. Okay, for passage of the compatible male sex cells called style, and the part where the fusion of male and female sex cells occur to form zygote, it is the ovary. So that is called style, and style opens into ovary. Okay, in the ovary, the fertilization takes place. Plants having the flowers where male reproductive cells of stamen of a flower fertilize the female reproductive cell of the carpel of the same flower, it is called self-pollination. So actually, the pollination is the process of transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of a flower. Same flower, it is called as pollination. Of different flowers, it is called as a cross pollination. Okay, the pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the ripe anther to the stigma. The transfer of pollen grains to the stigma can take place in two, within the same flower, or between the flowers of same plant, or between the flowers from different plants or species. Okay, understand? Same flower or in flowers from different plants of the same species. The pollination is the first case in the self-pollination. Pollination takes place within the same flower. Different flowers of same in the flower is a cross. Okay. Often involves the various external agencies to carry the pollen grains from one flower to another one. So these agencies may be you studied in your lower class. Okay, if you remember, just to recall, hydrophily. okay, anemophily, zoophily, okay, like that. The different pollination agents. When you visit a garden during the flowering season, you observe many butterflies, bees. What are the insects doing there? These insects visit the flowers for selfish, for the or honey. Indirectly, they are helping the flower. Okay, but at the same time, they help in pollination. When an insect visits a flower, the pollen grains another flower, the deposited pollen grains now get dusted on the stigma of the second flower, thus bringing out a cross pollination. Have you noticed it? The flowers pollinated by insects and those by winds. So observe the mechanism of pollination in the wheat or maize or China rose, salvia, any plant you can in your home garden also you can observe. Okay, children. So we can see this type of pollination in the plant pea family. Some other plants that are self-pollinating. Whether a plant is self-pollinating, definitely a self-pollinating plants, the flowers may not be attractive. Flower which is shows the okay. So if anthers are present below the stigma of the carpel, okay, you might you have seen okay, in the flowers sometimes the anthers are below the stigma of the carpel. How does the male reproductive cells fertilize the female reproductive cells in the flowers of such plants? By cross pollination, obviously by cross pollination. Okay, so because when the insect visit the nectar in the ovary, beneath that the peduncle nectar plants are present. So trying to move deep into the flower, it touches the anthers, the pollen gets attached to the body of the insects. Automatically, first it has to touch the stigma. Stigma is already sticky. Pollen stick to the stigma. Okay. So you have studied in earlier classes how birds the plant as agents. What happens or the male reproductive structure separate flowers? Okay, cross of which pollination takes place and the fertilization. Remember the flowers bottle studied in the earlier class. Okay, that is the best example where you can find okay, only the cross pollination. Okay, in cases where the male cells of the flower of a plant fertilize the other female flower on the same or different plant of the same group, this type of pollination is called cross pollination. So what is so self pollination is the transfer of pollen. It is the The male reproductive part consists of some sac-like structures. It's a head being like. You can easily observe these structures called help of lens. Pollen grain reach the female part, fertilize the egg to form a zygote. Okay, so that is the fertilization and the process of fruit. That is given here. Take a slide and put a few drops of water on it. Now take any flower like hibiscus, tridax, marigold. So these are all the flowers available in the surroundings. Anther over, so that powdery. You will see small dot-like structures in water. So these are nothing but the pollen grains. So observe these first under hand lens, then under a compound in the school laboratory. You may also make a permanent slide of the pollen grain from your lab. Observe under microscope, make a drawing of what you observe and compare with the diagram here. Okay, and two nuclei. Okay, individually pollen grain. As soon as the pollen of this pollen tube extends, or a pollen tube is the extension of the germinating pollen grain. It is helpful in the process of fertilization. That's why it is called pollen tube, or fertilization tube also you can call it. Okay. So how many cells in cell? How pollen grain, obviously the pollen grain on the stigma of the happens then. See in the next class. Okay, so here once again you can see. Okay, so in the brief, fertilization takes place after pollination. Shows the process of fertilization. The male gamete carried by the pollen formed with the pollen grain germinates. Female gamete, that is the egg, present inside the ovule. So further what we are going to discuss now, the pollen tube. Okay, so in the further class, reproduction is fertilization we are going to discuss. So far, read the text and try to understand. Okay, thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe our channel and press the bell icon for receiving latest